Hey guys, it's Carnifex, another nerd this video. That's right, same shirt means I did this same day. We're cranking them out today. Anyway, we are going to go into my Battlegrounds teams recommendations guide. This is going to be endgame focused. I'm going to plan on doing some streams where I actually take some time to let people give me their characters that they want me to work with, and then give some recommendations based on that. Hopefully that can be helpful to you. I'm just going to provide, hey, this is what you ideally would have endgame. Try and plug and play as you can see the priorities as I give them for your own teams. And if you're endgame, this is going to be just right for you. So let's hit it. Okay, so going in here, you can see there's a few categories. We have, for offensive side and the defensive side, right? We have sweepers and attackers on offense. We have tier 1 and tier 2 on defense. So what's a sweeper? A sweeper has a character that does an AoE that wipes out multiple characters very early in the game, if not the entire team. Those are going to be Lake and Revel for their respective teams. We run Lake here because no one else here has a leadership, and two, his leadership does help him because of the damage penetration that he gets, and so that helps him to clear out peeps. You can see we're running him with Amara, Ember, and Sengiel. Sengiel is kind of a placeholder here. You could use Corcoran if you really wanted to, but a little healing, you know, he might be able to get out a heal in Hilda that helps you to get there, because Lake's not going to be able to use that AoE until turn 3. It's a little late. It's different. It's a turn later than Revel, so it's a little more risky, but it is definitely more powerful if you can get it off whenever you run him in this combination. You get all the burnings from Amara. You get at least some from Ember. You want to have Ember be faster than Lake. If you watch my abilities recommendation guide and it wasn't too late for you already, hopefully you don't have Lake's passive built to give himself that haste. In that case, you would want to kind of adjust knowing that he's probably going to be getting haste. So in that case, you might even want to put something like a speed set on Ember, because you do want Lake's turn to come up as soon as it is reasonable. You want to run him with either damage or a crit damage set. Hilda in here, just because she is a panda, you could have put her in the panda defensive team. Having the double taunts there wouldn't have been a terrible idea, but because this is one of the two teams that you really want to use Zera against, and that really messes up, you know, the double taunt situation, I feel like she was better placed here. And for the times you might actually want to leave this team on defense if you're getting a little thin on teams you have available for defense. The other sweep of Team Rantha. The reason why we have Rantha here is one, as you can see, there's no other tanks here. Her getting out Battle Poo is going to provide some protection for your team, enough for Revel to get to his second turn. And also Rantha's leadership provides additional damage to clans damage dealers like Revel. It's all about Revel. Snorri puts in the bleed. Shart's going to come in, give a crit chance buff, and help Revel out there, which is another reason why it could make more sense to run with a crit damage set. And then Sergeant Pigwald, that's just for some AoE damage, just like the rest of them here. This is definitely a replaceable slot here. I just had to put something. Alrighty, going over to the next set of attackers. Now remember, these attackers, you're going to want to be using them on offense, but you're going to want to be replacing them on defense so you can keep them available to yourself so you don't get trapped and your opponent just says, you know what, I'm going to leave that there, and that's going to leave them with fewer counters to my best defensive teams. That's going to make them difficult to impossible to beat, or it's at least going to take a long time for them to get there. So I did divide up, I left the elves alone. I left the elves without more Doom there. I think that it is more valuable to keep this elf team together than to take more Doom here and put him with Kelrian. But if you are going to do that, that's what you would do. You would swap out more Doom here, put in Kelrian, and you would probably steal Xantara from Zera, and you would put Kelrian on anything from the Lake team to the Rantha team to maybe even here in place of Selena, you would put him there. So this does leave them pretty good as a counter against particularly the Soleus teams that you're definitely going to see, because everyone has Soleus teams. Thalon team is the team to me that you would first want to use against Soleus. So that's kind of more of how I'm thinking about using them. You may, if you see some of those people who have put out their elf-led, their Thalon-led elves with more Doom there, honestly, leave them there. They've made a mistake. leave them there. You are better off this way, having multiple teams going and leaving that best team to just sit there. This may not be, it would be a rare circumstance where you're an early game player who had very few battles in the lands, and in that case, it might be more valuable to take them away. But again, this is more end-game focused, and if they have that out there, let them have it because they made a mistake. Thalon, again, you saw it, Wonderlula, Delman, that trio, basically makes it pretty easy for you to have 100% crit chance on Wonderlula, so she gets out that invis really quickly. You're going to have a high crit chance with Thalon. Phalia, if you saw my guide, you want to run her with 3 crit chance rune sets on this because she has pretty low crit chance and she has pretty high potency, so she's going to get those debuffs out anyway. And Kelrian, again, using her against the primarily magic damage Soleus team here, Little Baddie being the only exception, that's going to be a good team to run there, and you're going to definitely want to run him with a tenacity set to resist the dispel here and the dispel here, and the dispel here is a lot of dispels. Thankfully, he's got reasonably high base tenacity, gets the tenacity buff. That's what you're doing. Now, Zera, this is probably the funkiest looking team. Honestly, even in the Rantha team. This is probably the most funky looking team, so I want to break down. Here's why it is. Zera is not going to be the best team, but she is going to wreck the efficiency of a lot of teams to an extent that leaves them manageable. But you don't want to run Zera as your power team because her leadership is just not as good as the Thalon and Slinger-led metas right now. So at that point, I'm like, well, okay, well, how am I going to put this together? Now, we may see Tromgar actually go in and replace Hera here. I think it's unlikely for Battlegrounds, but again, if you really want to have that top tier team, you could do that. But again, in my opinion, if someone goes balls to the walls and takes their leave that team alone. Just let it sit. They're not going to put it on defense anyway. So Zera, Tromgar, and Hardork are kind of the trio here that you're able to keep together. So why Eric Shieldbreaker and Xantara? Well, honestly, the synergy here, there wasn't a lot left over whenever I prioritized the much stronger synergies with all of the other characters all the other teams in the game. So with Zera, to me, you're going with single target damage. That is your goal, because eventually, Salvador is probably going to get off his he's going to get off something. Either he's going to give himself damage immunity so you can't ability block him or something. So your goal is going to be, let's take out someone like Renara, let's take out someone like Hera very quickly, let's take out the birdies, so that they're not doing as much damage. By the time that comes around, I have some AoE ability block coming from Hardork. I have some debuff prevention. Now, the main two teams she's going in, they really don't fly out as many debuffs. This is more about Eric providing some overall survivability from AoEs, which again, like Kagi provides solid AoEs. Boreas does put out some bleed. Foul reduces crit chance, reduces turn meter. Duo slows and puts down turn meter. So there is some, but it is definitely more about his single target damage and providing just AoE defense. And then Xantara to give some healing, and she provides pretty decent single target damage. Those cooldown reductions can be really valuable on this team. If you get it on Tromgar's taunt after he's taunted, congratulations, he's not going to have to recycle through that taunt. Hardork getting his abilities to a point to where it's like, hey, you know what, on turn 2, you can actually be worth something, congratulations. So this is definitely the most hodgepodge team, but I do recommend running it because it is worth keeping the synergies together on all these other options. We'll get into the unused characters, and kind of if you really want to run deep, you're going to have to run deeper in the 1v1. And so that it's not without value, which is why I put it here at the end, the teams that get adjusted as a result. So going down, Hera, right? This team is bonkers. Now I know I don't have Roxy in here. That's because most people are really not going to have Roxy available. And even if you do, it may make them more dangerous offensively, but their goal is to be a defensive team. Their goal is to take a lot of time to take down, and Renara is actually going to do a better job of that, in my opinion, than Roxy because of the chance to res. Because again, if I'm facing the situation, right, where Salvador does put up his debuff immunity on his first turn, there's not anything I can do with this team to prevent him from putting that on. I don't have any dispels. All that's going to happen is he's going to be able to put up that taunt, and I'm going to have to eat it for a little while. That is definitely one of the weaknesses of this team. But in that time, if Roxy's here instead, because this taunt's not going to end up here, right? Unless the dispel comes, it doesn't. If she doesn't, and this is a scenario where I would probably think about running Zera with full potency because it is so crucial for her. But anyway, I can go out and take out Hera real quick. She's really weak sauce, and then she can't put out her A3, which essentially gives a secondary like taunt option as well as additional dodge percent chance. I can go take out Hera real quick, and I don't have to worry about the fact that Renara is just going to bring her back as soon as she can. I think Renara gives you much better options here, although offensively, definitely Roxy is superior to Renara. So it depends on what you want to do. Do your own. Renara has some places she can kind of fit. One of those is actually the Zera team because of the synergy with regen. But really, I think if you want to go pure defense, I think that's what you should do. Renara's better. We don't have our Roxys very well built anyway. Going to Goblins. Now, the Goblins are a fantastic defensive team for a couple of reasons. One, their kit works decently well with AI. They have a decent amount of AoEs, which take no like AI into consideration, right? Like General Murdoch has an AoE. Structure Gorm doesn't have an AoE, but he has a summon, right? And so that's irrelevant. Like the target doesn't matter. And even then, his summons have AoEs. Adam has an AoE and an A3 that is like a self buff. Dr. Frank has a heal and he has an AoE. Major Shot is all AoEs, so it's pretty hard for them to mess it up by going for someone who's dumb, other than pretty much General Murdoch. That makes them really good for defense because there's fewer chances for the AI to choose the wrong individual target. Also, all of their assists add a ton of frames. What am I talking about when I say frames? I mean they add like a lot of time. When I say one of the main goals with your Battlegrounds defensive teams is you want to make it take more time. You can do that with crazy rough words, with crazy rough mechanics, or you can do that by having your characters take tons and tons of turns, because every time that they're attacking with one of those assists, that's a time where even if you're running it on auto, it's cutting down the percentage of times that you are taking a turn on offense facing that team, or an enemy is taking turns on offense facing this team. They're going to have longer fights against this team, and again, Adam is able to reapply that taunt. He's able to apply it with Structure Gorm, with his own passive. Really, really good defensive team. If it weren't for the pre-taunt and just the insaneness of Salvador, along with the res from Renara, I mean, there's a lot of survivability here as well. All the dodge chance. There are two different ways of going about it. This is might on average result in more time, but this is gonna result in some really tough matchups with a few counters. So moving on to the Kinley-led defensive team for Panda. So we kind of have like an offensive Panda team where we have Lake, Ember, and Hilda. Kinley, Foul for the dodge buff and the turn meter reduction. Because of her A1 and A2, she's going to cycle through and get to that dodge buff again quickly. She's going to keep that on a lot of the match, especially with slower characters like Kinley and Patriarchy out there, and frankly Foul is not fast. Patriarchy is going to put out the armor on everybody in the first turn. There's such good survivability. You can run Master Duo as a turn meter booster, and it's actually one of the things that, particularly if you're running a lower geared Master Duo with this team, you might want to run him with all of those like high health those health set runes with high speed secondaries, in order to just, hey, I'm getting up there, I'm gonna boost it up, and we're gonna get these turns out the way before more characters on the opposing team can try to apply debuffs that mess with our situation. Selena is in here because she just applies a lot of buffs and she's a solid healer, and frankly she's not good enough to be placed on your priority attacker teams. She has no place in the sweeper teams. She's not going to go up here, but because of the synergy with Kinley's leadership, where people are going to get health back for all the buffs that are put on, definitely good. And especially, again, look, all of these teams have a tank. And so even if you're not able to get Kinley's taunt off because Zera had this, there's no buffs flying around, right? And there might be eventually with Eric Shieldbreaker, but if you run Selena a little slower than you run your Kinley, I think that's the best way to run that particular team, because then there's a chance where even if he wasted his taunt, she's able to reapply it. At least there's a chance for her to reapply it to him. So not going to be a 100% chance, only going to be a 50% chance, even if it's the only buff out there, but that's something. And you're just kind of going for the average as much as you can. Soleus, this is a pretty traditional team. We've all seen this team a lot, even though the Ember substitution for Little Baddie is a little more popular in Arena. This is a really strong team. A lot of mechanics going for it, solid AoE damage, 3 dispels on it. It's definitely an issue for certain teams. Again, I think the best counter to it, if you have it, is Thalon. Not that demons are bad in any way, shape, or form, but I think that because of the additional options that the Slinger team gives you, especially because we're running them with more Doom in this circumstance, in my guide, I think that elves are a little better to go against something like Soleus, or maybe like elves, and you're better off leaving Slinger for something like Pride that's out there if you have Xera on cooldown. So going on, so these are the unused characters based on this guide, the ones above. So Mar, Mortha, Corcoran, Dizarog, Old Lore, Robinbad, Shaolin, Voiran, the Trickster, Yogi. Again, Yogi not a terrible character, just not great in Battlegrounds. There might be some scenario where I could see you using him with the Pride team, but really I just feel like where else do Kagi and Boreas go? And they do provide some irritants as well, so you can't, you're like, hey, we have to worry a little bit about damage. And he's going to give that speed boost, and they're going to cycle through their abilities later, blah, 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 blah. Darrien is not the worst leader in the world. We're actually going to see him used here in a sec. Rin the Unseen, Venomate, Illyria, Puncherface, and Mega Wheel. Out of these, I feel like the Puncherface doesn't really have a place because you don't care about getting around taunts here. You don't really care about getting around taunts here. This is no great fit. And if you have Xera, you didn't need to get around the taunt because you probably dispelled it. Now, could you put Puncherface here as kind of like a backup? Yeah, this would be the place to me that you would put Puncherface. If you really wanted to have a little more reliability there, or if we get into this and we actually experience more, I'm like, hey, you know what? We do need another way around it with Xera because people are throwing high tenacity in these tanks. We're just not quite able to hit it. I need Puncherface on this team to provide me another way because all these other characters are not going to have crazy tenacity, and that way he's able to apply the taunt on them or we're able to hit other people. That's the place where I can see him fitting. I do feel like it's kind of a shame that Eric Shieldbreaker would bite the dust there. So if you wanted to run really deep, this is going to be adding an additional team. So it's only adding one team, but the teams that are affected are right here, Lake, and basically it revolves around using this trio, the Phalia, Sengiel, Illyria trio. It does make the elf team a little weaker, but it also does let you prioritize certain secondaries and primaries with the Thalon-led elves because Sharp is guaranteeing them getting to max crit chance without a lot of secondaries and maybe even running a primary if you think it's really worth it. But adding Darrien doesn't have a terrible leadership. Darrien, and I give Darrien a lot of hate. He's one of my reds from the ability upgrades video. He's not awful. The problem is you get him early game, and until he is fully built, he really doesn't provide a lot. If you don't have him, his basic, terrible. His A2, not great. His A3, hey, it's a first turn taunt, and it gives him a chance for the dodge buff, right? That's good. And then he removes some debuffs. He provides a lot of armor from his... So that's kind of the thinking here, because this is, kind of what's the best team I can put Phalia with? Well, an Order Leader. And we have a lot of healing here. This is definitely one that could get swapped out. I went back and forth a little bit on this. I felt like I wanted to put Robin Bad over here just to give some more crit damage, at least to Revel. That would be a scenario where maybe you would run a damage set with him there because he's going to be in the crit damage buff and because of how math works. That would be more ideal there. There are some options here, but this is more of a survivability built team, and Phalia just eventually wears him down. This would be a defensive team as well, so that's why you see 3 healers on there. It's just to give some AoE irritants, so you can get around the tanks that people might be having, but that's why Sharp goes in here for Phalia, Robin Bag goes in here for Sharp, and Corpum comes in here for Sengiel, leaving you with these guys. These are kind of the... Man, I really struggle, and I think I left Puncherface out of here too. But again, the person to me that I wavered on most was putting in Puncherface for Eric Shieldbreaker or not. Overall, Eric Shieldbreaker does have a great first round buff. He does do solid single target damage, which was more of the goal for me whenever I was building that team. But Puncherface is viable there. He would be the one to swap out here. And in that case, I would actually put Eric Shieldbreaker on the Darrien team. For sure, no contest, 100% without a doubt. So I hope this has been useful to you. I know a lot of you are not going to be having all of these characters. probably most of you are not going to be running the Slate team, right? So in this case, yeah, you might want to go put Ember over here. If you have Hilda built, you might want to put her in for someone like Selena, so you have the double taunt going. You're probably going to have some semblance of this team, but maybe you need Sharp over there. I plan on doing some streams so that people can have an opportunity to give, hey, here's what I'm dealing with. What would you recommend building? And I help build those teams together for you. But this is what I'm going with. This is what you should be kind of working towards having going. And what's nice about these sweeper teams, right? My Sergeant Pigwald is not gear 11. My Sengio, not gear 11. My Sharp is not gear 11. They don't need to be. The main characters you need to worry about are the characters that are going to be doing the sweeping, and making sure they can get to the point to where they do their sweep and that everything's intact for the sweep whenever they get through all the burning and the bleed. So I hope this is useful to you. Again, I know this is not going to help out everybody in extreme detail because they're not built there. But hit me up on I'm going to put a link in the description for my Discord. It's only going to be a 24-hour. It's only going to work for 24 hours, but join in, ask me. I would love to help. I may save it for a video so that, because I can't do that all the time, so it will take some time. But I'd love to help out peeps, so let me know. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.